Hello, welcome to the second video of the series Programming 101. In the past video I used Java, but from now on I'll be using PHP for this series and probably for the rest of my tutorials because that's what I want to specialize on. Okay, so in this video I'll try to teach what arrays are, how can they be defined, its usage, what is a multidimensional array, and the limitations. So let's start with the first point, and it's the question, what are arrays? Okay, so arrays are ways to storing multiple values in the same variable. So let's say we have three persons. Person 1 equals John, person 2 equals Carl, and person 3 equals, I don't know, Jacqueline. Okay, so we have three persons and three variables. This means that the program has reserved space for three variables of the data type string in this case. Remember that in PHP we don't have to specify data types, but they still exist in the backend. So if we were to want to do a function or a method or some functionality with these persons, we will have to use these three variables name. So in order to prevent that, the idea is to group them in one variable and have multiple values, multiple information inside only one variable, and that's where arrays come handy for. So let's replace this with the same values but inside an array. So let's define a variable named persons, and let's say that it's an array. So this is lacking of a parameter, which is how many spaces does this array have for storing data. In this case it will be 3, so we just pass the integer 3, and the array now has a fixed size of 3 spaces, and I can access each space through its index. Indexes in array start in 0 and go all the way up to the number of elements. So in this case, this the first person will be the index 0, the second one the index 1, and the third one the index 2. So if we want to store the first person in the array, we would go like this: persons, and between brackets we must specify the index, in this case 0. The first index, the first place where we can store data would be John. Then we will do the same for the second person, which will be index 1, and the third person, which will be index 2. This is mostly for all programming languages, the concept that the 0 index is the first one, but there are some first index as one based arrays. PHP again is a 0 based array, 0 index based array. Okay, so if we want to output this, we will do echo the same syntax. Persons 0 would give us John, which is the first value. If I want to output Jacqueline, I would use the second index. Okay, here's one method of defining an array. Another one is to pass the parameters directly to the array function, and that would be John, Carl, and Jacqueline. And again we would have the same output because we are accessing the index number 2, which is the third element, which is Jacqueline. If I happen to put the 1, I'll expect to be outputted the Carl value, and there it is. So having to remember the index isn't very good the majority of the time. So like, let's say I want to know um, to access the Carl person. Okay, I would have to know that he is in the position number 1. Maybe I have 500 persons and I don't remember that. So in order to fix that problem, PHP allows us to, and again many other languages, to map, to tag the values with some other values. Let's say that we replace the index number with our own made indexes. So now we will have to, again, inside the constructor of the array, the as a parameters, we will pass like a direct like a dictionary for some languages, or maybe a map. There are many ways to call this. So we will have to put a name and the value that that name will have. So this is a structure, and if we want to go for another value, we would have to separate them with a comma. Okay, so we will go like name2 value 2. So in this case we're gonna store people, so let's say John. Now I'll use the surname, because it will be kind of nonsense to store the same value that its tag name. So John, it will be John Johnson. Then Carl will be Carl Johnson, of course. Props to GTA, Grand Theft Auto. And then we have that Jacqueline would be Jacqueline Johnson. Okay, they are all brothers. This is kind of in this case, but in this particular case with these values, it doesn't make sense, but soon it will make sense, I promise. So here I have echo persons1, and this will return an error because the index number 1 doesn't exist anymore. There are no numbered index anymore. Now the index is John, Carl, or Jacqueline. We either have an element at the position Carl, or we have an element in the position Jacqueline, or in John position, John index. We now don't have any offset or index name 1. Okay, so sorry for that. So here we have that undefined offset 1. So if we want to access to this Carl person, we would have to say, okay, give me the value of the position Carl, and there it is, Carl Johnson. Okay, so as I said, this hasn't got that much sense, because if we know this is Carl, then we know the value is Carl Johnson. But I did this structure because now I'll tell you about the multi-dimensions that an array could have. Dimensions are just levels of depth inside the array. So that means I can have an array inside an array value. So I can dissect this person into more than one value. So the Carl position won't have only one value, it will have whatever we want, as many dimensions as we want. So here we have to define an array as we did in the main one, in this one. And since it's the same structure, the same array object, we can utilize it in the same way. I can give some values like hello, my name is, etc, etc, and keep on passing values over here. But what I'll continue doing is this mapping structure to show you how to make something with more sense and more useful. Okay, so I have this Carl person, which will have another parameters, and that would be name, which will be Carl. Then I have a surname, which will be Johnson. Then I have an age, which is 23, and this could be passed just as an integer, or maybe if it were a float, it can be a float too, but I recommend to pass everything, to pass, I don't know if pass is the correct word, but to use everything as a string. This is to unify the data type of the array. PHP allows us to have different data types inside the array, but I recommend not to do that because we know for sure that person only stores strings. Then if we happen to want this as an integer, we could parse it knowing already that it's an integer, but with this following the same data type for every value, we know what to expect for every value. Okay, so here now I have a car person, and it has a separate array inside this main array, which is persons. So if I want to output car's age, sorry, now I have to access this dimension. Okay, so if I try to output this, PHP will tell me that I cannot convert an array to a string, because with the echo command we are outputting stuff that is a string or that can be parsed as a string, and an array cannot be parsed to string. So let's try to output that out and see the error, array to string conversion, and that won't happen because the car value in the person's array, it's another array. So in order to access one of the values of the second dimension of this array, we have to follow the same structure that we did for accessing the first level of depth of the array, the first dimension. We will do the same for the second one. So inside brackets we specify which index we want to access from the second dimension. In this case, the age index. Remember that the index now it's age. So if I say age, we now get the 23. And what about the index being a value again? Okay, if we happen to not want this for some reason, we can just pass these values as parameters without any definition. Okay, that will be correct, and let me show you. Now again I have to change this for a numbered index because we don't have that age index. Okay, so that would be index number 0, 1, 2. Okay, and here we have the same value. And if we happen to want to change the index, the numbered index values, we of course can do that. Like 3, this is messed up, but we can do that. Okay, but in this case, okay, sorry, not in a string mode, but like this is really messed up, but okay, everything is possible. If we access to the 8th index, we will access the Johnson value. Okay, there you have it. So it's a way of tagging the value with the name, the tag that we want. Another cool thing about arrays in PHP is the function bar_dump. Bar_dump is not only for arrays, but if we want to know what's inside an array, we can use this function, which will tell us not only what this variable represents, but what has inside, like the name says. Okay, bar_dump, we are dumping the information of this variable. And here we have it. We have an array of 3 indexes. The first one here starts and here it ends. This is this line. Let's remove it for now. Okay, so we have an array of 3 that starts here and ends here. The first value, index John, is a string of 12 characters, and that is John Johnson. The second value is Carl, which is an array of 3 elements. The element index 2 is Carl, the element number 8 is Johnson, the element number 4 is 23, and Jacqueline just have a string which is Jacqueline Johnson. So this is useful when you have a value, an array, a variable that it's coming from somewhere else in the code, and you want to know what it has inside. You do a var dump. And another thing I want to mention about arrays is that they have a fixed size, so you cannot add another value once it's defined. You cannot decrease its size. You can of course assign a null value to this element. Okay, so let's keep this. Let's do like persons John equals to null. Okay, we can do this, and this would be the only, sorry, that didn't work. Sorry, Carl, not John. This would be the only way of clearing, of removing an element in the array, or to this would be the only way of removing an element from the array, and we don't have an option to add another value. This is fixed size. Okay, we have whatever we define here, we have it like that. I correct myself. I think we can add stuff. Persons 89, it's equal to John Doe. Yes, okay, so PHP allows us to add elements, but in most programming languages, in more strict ones, we can't do this. Okay, so that would be it for arrays. In the next video, I think I'll cover the iterative structures like for, while, and do while. I hope this video went well, and okay, if you have any comment, please leave it. I'll be happy to read them. Thank you very much, and bye bye.